Hello and welcome to everyone joining us from around the world for today's webinar, Building Skills, Building Futures, How SFIA is Changing Lives. My name is Scott Morton from APMG International. Hello everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here. Today we're going to be talking about SFIA, which is the skills framework for the information age. Some of you may have heard of it before, and for others it may be completely new. So either way, hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have a much clearer understanding of what SFIA is, why it matters, and more importantly, how it's helping people and organizations build skills for the future. So joining me today are three fantastic speakers. We've got Paul Collins, CEO of Skills TX, Deirdre Sampson, Head of Skills and Training Partnerships at the Collective X, and our very own Richard Farrow, CEO of APMG International. So on the screen now, you'll see today's agenda. We're going to be giving you a basic introduction to SFIA, talking about the importance of SFIA in the modern information economy, the benefits of SFIA for both individuals and organizations, which is really important. And then we're especially excited to share a powerful success story from the Collective X, which shows the real world impact SFIA can have on people's lives and career opportunities. And then finally, SFIA as the employer's language. So before we begin, we welcome your questions today. You'll have seen a QR code earlier linking to Slido. You can use that to send in your questions at any time during the webinar. Our colleague Helen is monitoring the feed right now, and she will put them to our panel at the end of the presentation. So that's it from me. Let's get started. I will now hand over to Paul Collins, CEO of Skills TX, to take us into the first part of today's discussion.
Hi, Scott. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'd just like to echo the welcome to everyone that's chosen to join us today. And I do recognise that for some people, I'm going to be repeating things they already know, but hopefully there'll be a few nuggets in here that'll be bits of new information. So let's start with the definition of skills framework for the information age and scope. And I always start by just pointing out the actual acronym. A lot of people associate SFIA with, oh, that's about technical people, you know, in our organization, but it's actually all about information workers, really. So certainly a global recognized framework. De facto in many countries, Australia and New Zealand have actually got country licenses for SFIA. You can see it's used across many, many countries in many different languages. It's a very, very broad coverage. So it certainly when version 9 came out, it's much broader than just what we would consider to be technical skills, including like marketing and financial skills and procurement, etc. So if you're an information worker, SFIA's probably got something for you. One of the things that's been built in SFIA from sort of day one, really, is this concept of responsibilities, that as we move through a career, we generally pick up more responsibility, either for our own work or for the work of others, and that is very clearly documented in this framework. So as we move through that career progression, we can actually see that responsibility level increase. And finally, of course, or not finally, but one of the key things in terms of the framework is workforce planning. So many of our clients, this is how they do their workforce planning. What skills do we have? What skills do we need? How do we help people on their career journeys? How do we ensure that we target our development programs in a cost-effective and efficient way? Okay, dive in a little bit into those levels of responsibility that we discussed. We have 7 of them. And they sort of make a lot of sense when you put the definitions next to them. So like level 1 says follow. That's really the sort of things that you do when you first take your, step into the employment market. You're sort of following instructions. And as you build up experience, you start to assist other people, you apply your skills in a meaningful way. And 4 and 5 is really where the sort of subject matter experts, team leaders sort of fit. And many people, that will be the level that they operate at, really good at what they do and can be relied upon to deliver a result. 6 and 7, more the sort of senior leadership. I'm going to pick out Richard because he's on the call. So Richard's the CEO of APMG International. So I'm just dropping him right in it here and saying that I'm sure Richard's got lots of skills at level 6 and 7. And I can see Richard nodding, so he agrees with me. Okay. Okay, it's not just about skills though. Version 9 was a revelation, really. We've always included what we call generic attributes, which is like the level of autonomy that you work at. But SFIA 9 brought in behaviors alongside what we call professional skills. And I've actually spotted there's a bit of an out of date one there, but never mind. These behaviors are very much how you bring the skills. So you think the professional skills is what you bring, the behaviors are how you bring it. So things like decision making, creativity, digital mindset. The one that's, I'm just doing this for the people that are SFIA people because they've seen growth oriented mindset and they're all screaming saying it's not that. Yeah, it's improvement mindset. But you can see that they're very much the human behaviors, the EQ as opposed to the IQ. And the professional skills we'll just drop into in a little bit more detail on the next one. We won't drop into it on the next one. Just go back one. Sorry about that, guys. That's it. I'm going to go into the importance of SFIA. One of the things I did want to point out is as we were moving forward there, and I mentioned it very early on, that it's very broad. 147 skills documented in the SFIA framework. So that little diagram that you saw at the bottom there, the professional skills, say very broad coverage. But it's all very well talking about the structure, but why is it important? And becoming more important, I have to say, in this world of AI. So we'll just move into linking SFIA into the role that it plays in the information economy. I think we'll all agree, and we could spend forever talking about AI. Just about every conversation I have with my peers, we end up talking about AI. AI has got skills, and SFIA documents them skills. The other thing is SFIA actually documents the skills that you need to create AI. So we've got both of those things going on. So certainly addressing that accelerated technological change, SFIA plays beautifully into that space. Knowing exactly what skills you've got is another area that SFIA plays really strongly. I can't tell you how many times that I can have a conversation, a debate about what the word skill actually means. And in some cases, I'll ask somebody, what's a skill? And they'll say JavaScript. It's like, no, that's actually a language. So what we get with SFIA is this clarity around what we actually mean by skills. It's the things that we do. The ability to then benchmark what it is we need against what people have got. So defining your roles using SFIA, or jobs or position descriptions or skill sets, a way of grouping skills together that we can use to benchmark our workforce and know where we need to upskill. And future-proofing, SFIA generally updated every sort of couple of years. It varies a little bit, but the information that is pulled together for those upgrades is, you know, it's a collective endeavor. You know, I try to think how many thousands of hours go into understanding what's actually happening out there in the workforce, pulling it all together and documenting and defining new skills. Okay. Little bit of transformation and some of the key benefits here. I've sort of touched on this and I'm sort of just really bringing it together. So clarity in the chaos. What do we mean by a skill? How do we find what people do? What are the skills we need for digital transformation? All of those questions, if you use SFIA wisely, can be answered. Bridging that gap between technology and maybe the HR, business partners. We all speak the same language. Our employees understand what we're asking of them and they can see the skills they need to develop. And of course, what we touched on before, that future-proofing talent, particularly when we blend AI. I know a lot of our customers are now actually defining AI agents using SFIA and the skills that those AI agents have got. And then balancing the workforce, because let's be honest, AI can be quite disruptive. And I will now hand over to Richard, who's going to take us through some of the more nuanced areas.
Thanks very much, Paul. That's a scary thought that organizations are using AI to identify the skills that the AI has. Because everywhere you look today, you find that there is a skill shortage. There's lots and lots of people looking to get into the workplace, and a lot of them are actually losing those opportunities that we used to know. So this is quite a key thing for me. How does SFIA support both the individual and the organisation in actually preparing themselves for today and into the future? So it's very good at individual skill identification, as Paul said, but I think it's also important to start from where we are. So can we actually assess the skills of the people we currently have in our organisation? Do we know the skills they have? I mean, I discovered the other day that someone who works in APMG is a very talented scriptwriter. Now, we don't employ script writers, but we have a script writer. So you can then actually build on that capability to help move the organization forward, but only if you know that it's there. And of course, if you know that it's there, and once it's validated, you can then use it. You can then build on that, both for the employee and the employer. But how often do we actually look internally to find what our people can do and whether they're good for the role? And so, the organizational role clarity that SFIA brings, I think is very important. How many times do you read a job description that the only person who can fill it is an alien? We ask for too much in many job descriptions. Why don't we strip them back? What are the skills you actually need to do this job? And as Paul said earlier, at what level of responsibility or what level of capability do you need? Why not just strip it right down to this is what we're looking for? You will expand the pool of applicants. You'll find some very talented people that may not have the paper documentation, certificates that you might want, but are capable of doing the job. And we hear a lot more about that from Deirdre later. But, I think this whole thing around what skills we've got in the organization, what skills do we actually need to do the job? And of course, this is underpinned by the common language. As Paul said, you can debate forever what is a skill, what goes into a skill. But just think of a utopian world where we just used a common language. We accepted the definitions in SFIA. They were used by employees and employers and recruitment companies. So you actually had a way of clearly defining what you want. Opportunities were open to all who could demonstrate that skill. And then wouldn't that be a much better organization, a better place to work, and indeed better for society? And someone's actually done this, so I'd love to hand over to Deirdre, who's actually led a really, really interesting activity down in South Africa of actually bringing people into organizations that probably didn't have that opportunity maybe 2-3 years ago, because we thought differently then than we think now. So over to you, Deirdre.
Unmute myself. Yes, thank you so much, Paul and Richard, for giving really the basics and the building blocks of SFIA. What I'll be focusing on is really about developing and nurturing digital talent through SFIA. And this is really a central approach for Collective X is how do we enable change? There are so many youth, unemployed youth, that have barriers into entry within the ICT skills arena. It could be industry fragmentation, learning outcomes. What is being trained? And then what is the practical implication? And that is really, really what the focus is going to be on today. I'm going to bring in, you've heard from Paul and Richard. I will be bringing it, yes, from a workforce perspective, but very much on practically how we've looked at this. And I really, really look forward to sharing the success stories. And really the core theme is about partnerships, co-creation, and how do we look at it from that? But before I go any further, I really would like to show you a short video about the work that we do and what drives us. It is why ICT really matters, what's at stake, and how are we working together to create meaningful change. And we'll share the video now.
In South Africa, a digital revolution is brewing. Our country stands on the brink of extraordinary growth and innovation. Yet, we're in the midst of a digital skills crisis. There is a significant demand for digital skills in our country, but a critical shortage of skilled individuals to fill current and future roles. This gap threatens to stifle our potential and hinder economic growth. At the Collective X, We understand that no single entity can solve this challenge alone. That's why we've cultivated an expansive and well-coordinated ecosystem that focuses on demand-led skills development to guarantee the creation of a sustainable, scalable, and credible digital skills pipeline. Digital skills represent a 400 billion rand opportunity for South Africa. We know that digital skills can unlock the potential of South Africa's youth and promote economic growth, global competitiveness, and job creation for all. The Collective X is dedicated to facilitating the right digital training at the right time and for the right price, to impact our future in the right way. The Collective X is not just addressing the digital skills crisis, we're transforming lives, empowering communities, and shaping the digital future of our nation. Join us in making a difference. Together, we can unleash the power of digital skills.
Yes, so I'm going to be really taking you through some of our strategic pillars, what we've been doing, and then core themes, sharing how I've worked together with both Paul and Richard on creating this model and methodology. But before we do that, I want to just focus on 4 strategic pillars: addressing market failure, ecosystem advocacy, work-integrated learning, which is very important and will come through quite strongly, and then SFIA-aligned skills assessments. When we look at it from market failures, we speak about how do we enable it? So how do we enable change where we want to overcome ecosystem fragmentation? How do we bring the ecosystem together, ensuring alignment to business needs? Everything that we do is about demand-led, understanding what's in the industry, enhancing quality standards. That is really the link into SFIA. And what you will see is there are links in between all of these. Promoting inclusivity, because in the end, who do we want to enable? We want to enable learners, no matter what their background is, to have access to ICT opportunities within this space. Ecosystem advocacy, really about fostering strategic partnerships. That is across every one of the stakeholders, public, private, to enable greater collaboration and impact. It's all about doing this together. Not one organization, and you've heard that come through, can solve this. Only together can we be a powerhouse in understanding what are the skills needed today as well as tomorrow. Work-integrated learning is very, very critical, and you will hear it come through when I speak about the model and methodology that we've worked on. And it is about how do we create sustainable employment, practical proficiency, and that is level 3 that Paul shared with you, and then sustainable success. When we spoke about, Richard especially spoke about certificates, degrees, but can that person actually apply those skills? And what is happening is that's where market failure is happening, is certificates are generated. Everybody has technical skills, but limited ability to how do I apply it. And then first of all, and lastly, which is key, is SFIA. And Paul shared quite a lot about it, but it is a shared language. It's about creating clarity. It is about understanding the same language. So when an employer says, this is what I need, to ensure that the trainers are then training the skills that are needed. And as I've mentioned, not just for today, but for tomorrow as well. And it is about also internationally recognized capability standard, and that is a key partner of APMG. So it really is about all of these pillars that I'll be focusing on, especially on work integrated learning and SFIA. And I've mentioned it, and it is very, very key, is the power of the collective. We work very closely with the employer. We really do need to understand what is the demand. So what are the in-demand job roles, but also what are the skills in those demand job roles? What are they called? And that way is SFIA is very, very core, because that is really the guidance that is given to the training providers to understand what skills am I training, what are the job roles that are in demand, how are delivering the future fit industry-led training. So at what level, at what quality, is there clarity? And it is about the collective, so employers speaking to training providers speaking to employers to understand exactly what is needed today So strategically, it's about a conversation with an employer to understand, what do I need today? What does my business strategy say about what am I wanting? Where is my vision for the company? And then understanding what skills and capabilities are needed. And are there training providers that actually train those skills? If not, how are we enabling those skills to be trained? Government, it's really about enabling transformation change. It is about all the ecosystems coming together to understand what is the vision. What policies do we need? What incentives, what investments do we need? And bringing that into the fore. And you will start to see all of this when I share the success story that we've been speaking about. The learner, it is about the learner coming out with knowledge. So that's the technical, and you would have seen level 1 and 2. But really what we are looking at is junior entry level jobs where the person can actually apply and look at it from that perspective. It is about the power of the collective, bringing industry-led quality skills, and that will enable us to have impact at scale. Why SFIA is vital for South Africa, and we really have looked at this from a great perspective. About 5 years ago, we started to research what competency frameworks were out there, and the focus on ICT, and that really brings me into the first point. It is about national alignment. What are the Digital Skills Initiative? And especially, I mentioned the Digital Skills Framework 1. That is a framework that's been developed by the University of the Western Cape, where it focuses on digital literacy. So that's really before SFIA actually starts. Sector skills, leadership skills, and then ICT practitioner skills. And the great thing is when you bring academia together, you bring industry, you find that you have a shared framework. So they also selected SFIA, and we are the industry partner in SFIA. So we really bring the industry language together. So it is about a future fit ecosystem, a shared language across the digital ecosystem. Are we speaking the same language? And Paul did allude to that. A trusted benchmark. So internationally, what is meaningful, what is needed, and how are we doing it? Foundation for micro-credentialing, and I think that is going to come in as well when we talk about the partnership and collaboration between Skills TX and ourselves, where because SFIA is skills-led, you have your job profile and the skills underneath it. Those do change and evolve. So for example, SFIA and I brought in a lot of AI skills. What this enables us to do is look at micro-credentialing and from an international perspective, accredit these. So it is not about, and where SFIA plays, it's not about replacing any assessment. It's not about saying we need to assess differently. It is it is a value add, but it does enable portable, stackable, and globally recognized digital skills. So if we take a learner, they have their core skills they've developed, but how do we bring in the world of work where micro-credentialing is so important? Because how does a learner stay relevant? And it is about how do I carry the accreditation of a portable, stackable, career going forward. It's very much about a lattice where you create your career going forward. Supports demand-driven pathways for education into employment. So knowing what industry needs, that is really where education comes in. This is really where the route to competency forms a really, really strong point. Aligning learning capabilities with employer needs, 100%. How are we closing the gap between training outcomes and market expectations? I did mention that, and that's where SFIA comes in very strongly. So what is expected by the industry, and then what are the training outcomes, and how do we enable the learner to have sustainable employment? And the last one is really about addressing a critical digital skill shortage, and that came through very strongly in the video that I showed you. But through that is SFIA-aligned training pathways. So when you look to the route to competency, it really is about bringing that to life. And if we look at all of that, it really is, SFIA is not a nice to have. SFIA is essential in really bringing the ecosystem together, making it scalable and impactful for the whole of South Africa, and a benchmark for the world to look at. This is really where I'm going to get into where our partnership and collaboration came in with Skills TX. And it is about cultivating industry-ready talent. The challenge we started with is, how do we look at training programs? How do we look at it not just for workforce planning, but how do we assess training programs? How do we bring in work integrated learning? How do we bring in demand? And then very much, how do we ensure that the learner can practically implement this perspective? It was about combining expertise. Collective X really brought the vision in what are we needing, what is the market needing, and really how do we enable training programs to be at a quality standard and industry-led while internationally benchmarked. So that's really where the discussion started with Paul, from his expertise and Skills TX, really very much about SFIA driven. The Skills TX platform, everything below that has SFIA skills. So as Paul mentioned, 147, and it really is about how do you combine those? How do you assess those? Skills TX has an ecosystem of global accredited assessors. They review the training programs, not from a content or changing the way you deliver it, but more about what are the core skills? What is the duration of the skills? Can the learner, is there enough time for them to enable the learning of those? So, and from work integrated learning, a critical part of that is, is it repeatable? Can they actually do it independently? So that when on day one, they walk into the work environment, they are work ready. It's no longer just about a certificate, a degree, a diploma. It's, can the person actually do the work that they have been trained on? And that's really where the discussion started with Paul and with myself. And what the Collective X brings is, how do we use an international accredited competency framework for South Africa? How do we make it ours? So as Richard and Paul mentioned, it's less about the theory. Yes, theory is very important, but it's about how can you practically make it work. So that was over 2 years we've been working with that to really look at it from a methodology and model to say, what is relevant to a training provider? And then how do we integrate demand-led? How do we integrate and assess a work integrated learning? We first started looking at it just really from workforce planning, from a technical perspective, and then realized that in actual fact, to be scalable, you cannot randomly interview every learner coming out of a training program. So that is where APMG formed a really critical part, where we then started to evaluate the program and to say, what is the program? What skills are being taught from a technical perspective? How do we assess work integrated learning? And the duration, as I mentioned, how are you proving critical success factors? And will the person be proficient in those skills when they come out? So that was where the discussion came in, because what that will mean is the program is accredited. The learner, when the trainer follows that exact training program, the learner is then accredited with a digital badge, which is endorsed and accredited by APMG. So what the learner gets is, yes, they get local training with an international benchmark. And what APMG did is they looked at the Skills TX and looked at their rigorous way they used the rubric scoring, and then said, we are happy to endorse it. And that is where the difference came in, is scalability is there. We were able to really looking at it from a program perspective. Once it assessed, my partners on the webinar will know there's a lot of detail that goes into it. But what we need to understand is, practically, will that program be able to be certified at a SFIA level, where technical as well as work integrated learning? So that's really the great thing about partnerships and collaboration and alignment. What you will see on the side there is one of the learners, and I'll be sharing the success stories where they achieved SFIA badges. What we look at is 6 core skills for every job profile. And this was about, they achieved them, they get 6 SFIA digital badges, and that is for every core skill. So in the end, it's about, what are the expertise do partners bring? What is the vision? So that really was what we brought to it. And then what is the model and methodology that sets a global benchmark? So we have developed this model and methodology for South Africa's perspective, but already I know that Paul and I have been discussing in there are other countries who look at micro-credentialing. How do you do that? How do you bring government in? How do you bring employers in to make sure it's demand-led? And then how do you bring the trainings in? And as we go to the next slide, you will see, as I just focus on the core aspects, is redefining skills assessments. This is not about taking away from training providers how they do assessments or from how public sector does assessments. This is about how do we bring the entire ecosystem together. Ecosystem interoperability is about the skills, especially with the focus of micro-credentialing. We all know about lifelong learning and about being relevant. And with AI coming in, it's about certain skills will still be there, but may become irrelevant. So how do we become an interoperable system where we bring the additional AI skills in? Industry relevance, very much about demand-led, and how do we listen and hear what is happening within the industry, both from today and tomorrow. Practical application, all about work-integrated learning, and how do we bring that in? That is absolutely core. The learner must be able to walk out of that training and be future fit and ready from day one. Continual improvement, I have mentioned that. Paul and I have worked on this for about 2 years. We will go through an initiative, we will work with training providers and employers, and something new will come in, an insight, a challenge, but also an opportunity to be able to say, how do we make this work from a governance perspective? When a program is accredited, there are very strong governance aspects in place where, because the learner has to be able to achieve those, for example, technical skills and work integrated learning. So we always look at it from an evidence perspective. So it's continual improvement, global recognition. APMG is a very, very critical person here because they bring in not only local accreditation, but also global accreditation for the learners. And that will then enable employers to look at it from a different perspective. Pioneering partnerships, and I know I said it in the previous slide, it really was about 3 different people, different companies coming into the ecosystem and saying, how do we bring this together? How do we look at it from a different perspective where we look at South Africa? How do we define and refine and change the perspective and enable advocacy within the space? So being locally strong, bringing in IC talent that we need, but also being a global benchmark for what is happening for the world into South Africa. So that's really about how do we pave the way for future fit workforce, but also raise the bar for workforce development globally. And that's really the model and methodology that we have designed. And then the thing that, where we are very, very excited to share with you today is the tangible benefits that have come through within this. I'm going to focus very quickly on the ecosystem, the impact and challenge, and then we'll be sharing a video because in the end, what do we want to share? The learner stories, and that'll come through in the video. But it was about unemployed youth, fragmented training pathways, limited access to practical application. You will hear these are school leavers. Some of them had never, ever opened a laptop. The solution, and I've spoken about it as well, collaboration, co-creation, and collectively, no one organization can do this on their own. What we are wanting is not just initiatives to sit on the side, but to really come in together as the powerhouse for South Africa. Collective X, we came in as the partner as outcomes-based funding to support employers in developing young digital talent. The government here was Western Cape Government. They were the ecosystem collaborator on stipends, enabling learner participation. Then we had training partners, and you will hear from foremost Mazars, who were the training partners, and we went through a rigorous process of mapping the business analyst role, really aligning the programs. That was then reviewed and accredited by SkillsTX. It was then loaded into the SkillsTX platform. What happens is those skills are locked into the platform. The learners are then uploaded and are locked into the business analyst. That enables quite a rigorous governance process on where are they with technical skills and where are they in digital skill. And to be able to have digital badges, they need to be proficient in work integrated learning. So only once that evidence is captured are the digital badges accredited and given to the learners. So if you go onto LinkedIn, you will see a lot of what you saw in the previous slide, where learners who some had never opened a laptop, have showed their profile, have shared their skills, and have shared the excitement and hope. I think if we look at even one individual, it's not about enabling one individual. It's enabling a community about how do we look at it from that perspective. Demand, it was foremost Mazars as the demand partner. And really, we started with, and when I say we, it's the collective and all of us in the ecosystem. They started with 51 learners. And one fell out for personal reasons. 50 learners became accredited as a business analyst. And I had the honor of being there right in the beginning on one of the first days that they were in class. Their eyes were wide. And then also at graduation, the smiles, the hope, the excitement about saying, I'm actually now employed. Impact, as I said, equipped with future skills and workforce ready proficiency. And now we're going to be sharing, really speaking from the learner's perspective and sharing the video with you.
I'm Judy Robertson, and I'm the Managing Director of the Forbes Mazars Institute of Development. So we have 50 of these wonderful youngsters in our midst, and they've been on a program which focuses on business analytics and Microsoft certifications.
I'm Naima Adams. I'm 19 years old. I'm born and raised in Cape Town, and I'm currently finishing off the business and data analyst opportunity that I've got.
My name is Larato. I'm 26 years old. I have been part of these amazing opportunities for a year now.
The attributes we looked for within the learners was really around the ability and willingness to learn. So Larato, her biggest growth has been coming out of her shell. She's been seen by the business, and she's been poached by our IT security team already. Naima's that young lady who's always here early and definitely has also been snapped up by the business. This group of learners particularly came straight out of school from matric and from quintile 1, 2, and 3 schools, so some of the most impoverished areas in the Western Cape.
This is my first job experience, so this learning opportunity is a big thing for me. That's why I took it with both hands when I got the opportunity.
I wanted to learn more about computers. Additionally, I come from this background where technology is a big word and intimidating word, so I wanted to change that and influence youth as well.
So work integrated learning is critical and useful because it really allows the application of knowledge and skill in context.
I want to be able to create programs that help businesses improve and help them grow.
I would say my future looks bright in this world of technology.
They have a direct contribution to the competitiveness of South African organizations and the economy.
And I think, watching that video, we can talk about a lot of models, methodologies, strategic pillars, but in actual fact, that is what we want to see. We want to see tangible impacts, and there are many more youth coming through this process where digital badges will be awarded. If we look at our impact by 2030 from Collective X, it really is about a thriving digital skills market, globally competitive and cost-effective, enabling policy frameworks and return on skills financed being optimized. Young South Africans will have equal and inclusive access to entry-level digital jobs. And it really, in the end, you look at that and it is about the learner. How can we make access, no matter what your background, open to everyone? 500,000 jobs by 2030. And really, if you look at SFIA, and that is the focus of today's webinar, it's about how do we have it adopted across the entire ecosystem as part of the National Digital Skills Plan? We can look at this and we can say it is only a dream. It is a roadmap, but only when we come together, when the ecosystem comes together collectively, employers, training providers, government, and then the impact on learners. Can this be achieved? And we really do believe that this is achievable. So really a call to action before I close off with the final slide is, do get involved, sign up on our website to receive communication on Collective X. There's also QR codes there. If you're an employer, training provider, part of government, really do go into our website and click on the various links. Follow us on LinkedIn. You will find a lot of more, or should I say more success stories about what's happening and all the information. And then if you want to hear more about SFIA Ready in Alignment, this has been just a short really overview. There is my email address, and you're welcome to engage with us on that as well. And then if we look at this, and in closing, transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It's about how do we act collectively together to meet really South Africans' ICT demand, but also set standards for the rest of the world to follow. So my parting words to you is, let's transform digital jobs together. And thank you. I will now hand back to Paul.
Takes me back, that, Deirdre. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go off topic a little bit here, because you were talking about those 50 learners. And I remember the exact moment they were online. We're the system of record for this. And when the button was pressed as those badges got issued, it was an emotional moment. I think we can agree on that, Deirdre. And the fact that those students, some of them never owned a laptop, are in gainful employment, was just unbelievable. And I think just looping into APMG International here, those badges that are issued are transferable. Those are recognised skills that these learners can apply in the workforce, and an employer can be confident that these people can do what the badge says they can do. Okay, real world impacts. So I touched on that a little bit in me going off topic a little bit there, but bringing this back together again, that communication, the ability to have a SFIA skill badge that says, I've got, business situation analysis or requirement definition at level 3, and I'm proficient because I went through a certified course, is a really clear way of illustrating what you're able to do to HR and employers alike. That really ties in, I say, with the fact that these skill badges sit alongside certificates. So for sure, I might come out with a AZ900 Azure certificate, but alongside of that, I've got the badges in terms of the skills that I actually deliver. So it's value add. It's not changing anything. It's just adding to what's already there. And of course, connecting into the business impact, I'm going to use a little anecdote here that we compare people's skills to a role. And when we employ someone, we're quite happy with 50% match. And I have people say to me, you must be crazy. You're employing people that can't do the job. But the difference is I know the 50% they can do, and I know the 50% they can't. And that's a nice place to be. So productive from day one, and we start developing from day one alongside of that. So that connection into that business impact is a very big part of that, by speaking the same language and having that ability to know what you can do and what needs to be developed. Okay, so just as a bit of a summary here, standardization, everyone just use SFIA, like why not? It's one of the best frameworks I've ever come across. I mean, frameworks are frameworks, but my goodness, the precision that goes into the definitions is incredible. So really good way of standardizing information skills. Certainly supporting workforce development. And I actually just got an email today from a government agency, who I will remain nameless, saying they're pretty sick of spending a lot of money on training and not getting the result that they thought. This changes the dynamic there. They can now actually precisely know when they spend the money, they're going to get the skills that they're paying for, if you will. And finally, that bridging the communication gap. And this is the great sort of hidden feature of all of this, is when we know what a skill actually is and we're speaking the same language, whether you're an individual, a team leader, an organization, an economy, it doesn't matter. We've got that clarity and we're all speaking the same language. And that really does make a big difference. Certainly here in Australia, that's the way our government approached their digital landscape. And I don't see why every other country shouldn't be doing the same. Okay, a bit of a call to action. Touched on this a little bit earlier. We talk about knowing what skills you have. There's a QR code. That's our free online assessment. You can select a role or you can assess yourself against the whole framework. You'll get a user login and you can start taking control of your own career development. We have a bit of a hashtag that says we own our skills. And that's a truism if ever there was one. You release them out to the company you work for at that point in time. So by all means, dive into that and make use of it. And that just really draws us into the Q&A. I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to moderate that for us. And you've got some URLs there. By all means, dive in, look at our blogs, look at the Collective X, definitely look at the APM's international website. And I would be very remiss if I didn't say the font of all knowledge, the SFIA website. There's some amazing content on that. So definitely get in there and subscribe, give your email away, and that's going to give you access to a lot of great material.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, so while you and Deirdre and Richard have all been talking, we've had some good questions coming through from our audience who really want to know more about SFIA and the framework. So first question here is, if one aspect of SFIA is about developing a shared language around skills, what initiatives and incentives are in place to drive this adoption? Do you want to go first, Paul?
I can pick that up because, I mean, clearly I speak to organisations every day in terms of initiatives and incentives that drive it. I think the key one, well, actually, there's a few. From an employer point of view, the thing that really drives is attraction and retention and the ability to spend your dollars wisely. In terms of initiatives in Australia particularly, we've got a country license for SFIA. So it's sort of like, well, why wouldn't you use it? In terms of incentives, and it was something we were discussing the other day, it's a way better alternative than developing your own, because that's going to cost you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of maintenance. So the incentive is, this is a not-for-profit. It's developed by industry. And I'm going to add one little bit, because I had a strange conversation about a year ago when somebody said to me, SFIA means nothing to us because we don't use SFIA. And I said, are you an employer? And they said, yes. I said, well, it does mean something to you because it's your language. Whether you like it or not, that's where it came from. So the incentive is it's your language already. I don't know if anyone else has got any thoughts on that.
Yes, thanks, Paul. I'll just jump in from a Collective X perspective. Whenever we have a co-funding, the incentive is twofold. One is all the training programs must be endorsed because we want to guarantee the quality standard, so what skills are being trained. And then there's a clear understanding also from the employer side, so from the demand side. It creates a shared language. And when the programs go through that process of SFIA endorsement, the employers know what they are getting. So we've spoken about that, a shared language. But then the training providers are endorsed as well for that program. So we have the confidence that when that training program is followed, that the learner will be proficient when they come out. So there's various incentives and initiatives that we are following within South Africa.
Right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Deirdre. Next question here is there a database of roles that have been mapped to the SFIA framework?
I'll pick that one up. That's an interesting question. There's a lot of body of knowledge content out there. So the SFIA website has got something called views, which are like groups of skills that represent I wouldn't say, I mean, roles really should be specific to the organisation, but they're good enough as a fantastic starting point. Again, don't want to make a big deal of this, but over here in Australia, the Australian Public Service have created roles that they've made available. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia did the same. So there's a lot out there, but I would always advise you don't just grab one and say, oh, that's a DevOps engineer, that's what I need. You then apply it to your organizational context. But they're a great starting point. I would certainly go to the SFIA website because their views are amazing. We've included them in our platform. So when you register to do a self-assessment, you can select a view, like, whether it's cyber or, project or whatever it might be.
Great. Thank you, Paul. So there's definitely interest. People want to know how to use SFIA. So next question is, what is the value of adopting SFIA compared with creating your own skills framework?
Can I have a go at that one?
Yeah, I reckon that's you, Richard.
Many years ago, I was involved with a project management methodology, and organizations used to talk to me about developing their own. And when you look at the effort and time it takes into developing your own skills framework compared with adopting an internationally recognized framework, the cost of developing your own is enormous. It's not just about writing it to start with, it's also that maintenance. And as Paul mentioned, SFIA is maintained and updated every 2 to 3 years. It's done by a huge committed group of volunteers. The effort to maintain your own is huge, and then you're left a little bit behind. Do you actually have the internal investment to maintain it? And if you heard what Deirdre said, they started looking at frameworks 5 years ago, centered on one, convinced people that that was the way to go. And all that development and upgrading is outside of their costs at the moment. They can adapt it and use it as they wish. So that's the real benefit of it. It's a huge return on investment using something that is proven rather than developing your own.
Thank you, Richard. Just come in right now. Paul, you mentioned a country license. Someone wants to know, what is the purpose of a country license? And is South Africa or Collective X going to get one?
I'll pick up the first bit and I'll hand over to Deirdre for the other one. The advantage is sort of, from a government point of view, we've got certainty. Like when our government agencies look for skills, they use that framework. There's some advantages for the industry as well, that they get easier access to the framework. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think if people are going to use the framework, they should register and sign up for it. And if there is an opportunity to improve your workforce as a result, well, I reckon you should pay the SFIA Foundation a bit of money for it. But as far as Australia is concerned, most organisations can just basically use SFIA without any restriction. But the key one I say is that the government, when they're looking at a supply chain, they're using SFIA in that supply chain. You usually provide contracts or consultancy resources into government over here. They want to know what SFIA skills you bring and then what you're going to charge for them, so to speak. And I reckon the next one's for Deirdre.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And I think if you look at, for example, New Zealand and Australia that really do have countrywide licenses, this is very a national skills initiative. It is run and driven by a government. So those are the discussions that we need to be having, is because there is quite a cost involved with countrywide licenses, because it enables every organization, every individual to be able to use it. So yes, it is something that we could look at, especially when we look at national skills initiatives and bringing the entire ecosystem together.
Great, thank you both. Next question. So Paul, I think you said there were 147 skills in the portfolio, in the framework. On average, how many skills does an individual typically have? I think, Deirdre, you said there were 6.
I always, well, that's in the roles that we're working with as entry-level roles, so that's a slightly different context. I just want to highlight something right up front, because that's an interesting question. And when we document an individual and their capability against the framework, we don't document skills as binary. So first of all, we've got to recognize that we've got 3 levels that we recognize, which is knowledge of a skill, proficiency, which is what we've been working with Collective X on, which is what work integrated learning provides, and then competency, where you've done it repetitively in a contextual environment and delivered a result. So I'm going to take the top one there and say, what would be the average number of skills an individual could hold at the level of competency? That is, I just do it and I'm really good at it. And the word average freaks me out, but we'll live with that. We work on, if someone's got more than 15 skills at the level of competency, so I am really good at 15 things, that is where we start to think, you're sort of stretching it if you go beyond it. Doesn't mean that we've got people that have got way more than that. My business partner way back had 40 odd skills and absolutely kept them at competence level because he covered a lot of ground. But 15 is sort of, an experienced worker could maintain, because there's only so many things you can do in, a working day.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. I think we've got time just to squeeze one more question in. And this was, how is the industry and workforce preparing to adopt and integrate SFIA? And how are companies recognising its importance in valuing and advancing talent?
I'll jump in there, Paul, and then I will hand back to you. I just think from a South African perspective, what we are seeing is the values. I'll start first from an employer's perspective. They are seeing the value in, they know exactly the outcomes, the critical success factors, and they then know what that person is coming into the industry with. So it is about a common language, reducing industry fragmentation, so they see the value. Where the training providers see the value is in looking at their training programs, understanding, are they at an international benchmark, and are they training the right skills that the individual will be adopting and being absorbed into the industry with sustainable employment, because that's really what we want. We don't want someone to go in for 12 months and then not be sustainably employed. So what we're starting to see is a lot of adoption, integration, a lot of interest, a lot of discussions from all the ecosystem players. So it's not just from industry and workforce, but it's from government, from the employer, as well as training providers. Paul, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
You sort of touched on it there, Deirdre. I think the word that I have in my mind is inclusion. And I'm going to use an anecdote from one of our good friends, and I won't use his exact language. He was ex-military, so you can probably gather where that went. But he had a group of people in a room, and we were going through a skill assessment. And his words were, I don't care how you got the skill, I just want to know, bleep, 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 that you've got it. And that was the value for him. Like, some people had got degrees like you wouldn't believe. Other people had just done it as learn the hard way and experimental. But at the end of the day, what SFIA did was define what everyone can do, regardless of how they got there. And I think that's like one of the really important aspects from an organization. It doesn't matter how you got there. It's what is it can you do? And from an inclusivity point of view, it takes away that potential bias that we sometimes have. If I'm good at something, I'm good at it. I might not go to the company barbecue every weekend. That's fine, but I'm good at what I do. And there's something here that describes what I do. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Great way to end. Thank you, Paul. Unfortunately, that's the hour. It's gone in a flash.
Wow.
Yep. So a big thanks to yourself, Paul, Deirdre and Richard for speaking today, and for Scott for hosting. It's been a really fascinating session. I'd like to also thank the audience for joining in today and submitting through your questions. We will be sending out a recording of this session today, and with all the links that you need to find out more information and to get in touch with us. So look out for that in your inbox in the next few days, and we will end it there and wish you all a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks, guys.